We are 7 weeks into the NFL season, and it's finally starting to look like the Jacksonville Jaguars have figured things out. And with the way that last season ended, no one really knew where this Jacksonville team was going to go from there. Because in 2022, to the surprise of many, they had a pretty solid season. They went 9-8, they squeaked into the playoffs, and they even made a pretty decent playoff push. So how do you follow up a season where you overperform? Because I have no idea how one even does that. Well, the media thought the only way Jacksonville could improve upon this season was if their guy, Trevor Lawrence, who's heading into his third year, was an MVP type of player, right? He played at an MVP caliber level. That's what many analysts were projecting Trevor Lawrence was going to do this season. And that's a lot of pressure to put onto a guy who's only in his third season. And he's already made massive improvements year by year. So to expect him to make a leap to MVP level is pretty insane. Especially because it's not like the guy's been underperforming. I mean, let's take a look at his first ever playoff game versus the Los Angeles Chargers. What does he do? The defense struggles. He struggles in the very beginning. The first 2 quarters are a massacre. I'm telling you, the Chargers are leading 27-0 midway through the second. And while all things look terrible and all hope looks lost, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson managed to rally the guys together and make a little bit of a comeback. And by a little comeback, I mean that Trevor Lawrence goes out and throws 4 touchdown passes and gets his team in field goal range at the very end. I mean, he had a touchdown right before the half, 1 right after, and 2 more towards the end of the game to get his boys back into things. All of a sudden, with 5 minutes left in the game, Jacksonville is losing 30-28. Yeah, they've cut the deficit from 27 to 2 in a matter of less than 2 quarters. It was amazing. I couldn't believe my eyes and I watched it live. And to top it off, with the game on the line, Trevor Lawrence gets his team down the length of the football field into field goal range, and with time expiring, he gives the Jaguars an opportunity to take the lead, and that's exactly what they do with a Riley Patterson 36-yard field goal to win his first playoff game of his career. All of a sudden, the Jaguars look unstoppable. Of course, they would go on to face the Kansas City Chiefs in the next round, so this Cinderella story ends a little bit early. But, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs game wasn't even that bad. This young, scrappy Jaguars team managed to hold their own against a juggernaut like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they only ended up losing by 7 points. There was a real chance the Jaguars win that game. Of course, it doesn't happen. They go home early, but, you know, they leave the season on a high note, right? They go really deep into the playoffs. They squeak in there in the first place, and all of a sudden, there's so much momentum built into this season. And then 2023 rolls around. Now, due to the fact that Jacksonville is in a sorry-ass division, they have 6 winnable games on their schedule. Let's keep it real. The AFC South is not the strongest division out there. And the first of those winnable games would have to be against the Indianapolis Colts week 1. And the Colts are going out there with a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is an absolute phenom, but rookie QBs never tend to fare well, especially in their debut games. So, of course, the Jaguars come away with a pretty easy week 1 victory. I mean, don't get me wrong, the game was sort of competitive early on, with teams going back and forth, but once the 4th quarter came around, Jacksonville really took control. They got 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter that really kind of blew this game open, and all of a sudden the Jaguars win 31-21 off the back of Calvin Ridley, first game back from suspension. Way to go, Ridley. And Trevor Lawrence also had himself a game. 2 touchdown passes with almost 250 passing yards. That's pretty good for week 1. But after week 1 is when the good news began to slow down for the Jags, because they went on to play Kansas City week 2. Kansas City was coming off a loss. They really needed this one, and everyone believed this was going to be a high-scoring game. It was the exact opposite. Both offenses played terribly. They didn't look good. Honestly, it looked like both teams were trying to lose. The score ended up being 17 Chiefs, 9 Jaguars. Both teams had a potential to kind of run away with it at any point, and neither did so. it was just kind of one of those games where neither team really deserved to win, but there had to be a winner. And that led us into week 3, which from the outside looking in looked like a really easy opportunity for the Jaguars to get things back on track. They had one of those winnable games, this time versus the Houston Texans, and they had another rookie quarterback against them in CJ Stroud. However, CJ Stroud is not the typical rookie, okay? He's been balling out all season, much to my surprise. I mean, the way he looked in the preseason, I could not have imagined this coming at all, but he balled out versus the Jaguars, had himself a game. I'd say he played better than Trevor Lawrence did this week. This week 3 matchup was essentially the CJ Stroud show. Now, things did get going for Jacksonville running-wise. I know Tank Bigsby got like a rushing touchdown, and Travis Etienne got 80 yards on the ground, so there was that. But other than that, it was Texans all day. They won 37-17, and now the Jaguars are 1-2. It's a slow start. Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be an MVP candidate, or at least playing at an MVP level, and he hadn't looked pretty all season. That led us to a London game. And you know the Jaguars thrive when they're in London. I mean, London is essentially the Jaguars' home away from home. They play there way more often than any other team in the NFL, so of course they're going to go out there and they're going to ball. I mean, they kicked the game off with a 30-yard touchdown pass from Trevor Lawrence to Calvin Ridley to get a pretty good 7-0 lead, and they only kept that momentum rolling into the second quarter because in the second quarter, Darius Williams would get a 61-yard interception returned to the house. All of a sudden, it's 17-0, and yes, the defense is finally making some turnovers happen. And honestly, the Falcons didn't come back. They didn't come back after being down 17-0. That was kind of the end of the game. That's why the Jaguars ended up winning 23-7. And that win was huge for the Jaguars. They needed a little bit of a confidence boost, especially with who they had to play in week 5. They had to go up against a really good team in the Buffalo Bills. Of course, the Bills are playing in London, and the Jaguars had already been there for a week, so maybe the Jaguars kind of got an upper hand when it comes to that. And Trevor Lawrence played pretty well. He only had 1 touchdown pass, but he threw for 300 yards. The defense locked in again. They forced Josh Allen to throw 2 interceptions, and those 2 picks were very vital because this was a close game. The Jaguars ended up winning 25-20. Travis Etienne balled out, by the way. Let me just mention Travis Etienne real quick. You cannot talk about the Week 5 Jags without talking about Travis Etienne's performance. 136 rushing yards, 26 carries, 2 touchdowns. The dude destroyed me in fantasy that week. That's why I remember him playing so well. Anyway, some could argue that the London series, the little London saga, kind of saved the Jaguars season as of now. They went 2-0, and they left London being 3-2, which was fantastic, especially because the schedule kind of lightened up after that. Week 6, again, they play the Colts. Why have 2 teams play each other twice this early on into the season? No idea, but the schedule makers do what they want. So right here, we got ourselves another Jaguars defensive game because Gardner Minshew threw 3 interceptions, and thanks to the amount of pressure the defensive line was putting on him. Plus, the defensive backs also played out of their minds. I mean, 3 picks, come on. They had to have themselves a game. And Travis Etienne got 2 touchdowns. When does Travis Etienne not ball out? Apparently, it's every single freaking week, man. Christian Kirk got 49 receiving yards, not too great, but he did get a touchdown. And the Jaguars won that game 37-20. And where does that bring us? Right to week 7. The reason I'm making this video, because as good as a 4-2 record sounds, 5-2 record, can't get better than that, right? 5-2, 5-2, that's a pretty number combination. They had a Thursday night game versus the New Orleans Saints, where Derek Carr, he didn't play well. There was a lot of on-the-field issues. You see him screaming at his receivers. Maybe that's just what the Jacksonville defense does. They make these quarterbacks nervous. They make them anxious. They make them pissed off. That's the kind of defense I want on my team because, you know, the Bears ain't got shit going on. But we're not here to talk about the Bears. We're here to talk about the explosion on offense and defense the Jaguars have been experiencing over the past few weeks. And not only did Lawrence cook through the air this week, he also cooked on the ground. I mean, 8 carries for 59 rushing yards, led the team in rushing. That's crazy. Of course, Travis Etienne, he didn't get as many rushing yards as Trevor Lawrence, but he did get a few touchdowns. I'm pretty sure he had 2 touchdowns very early on into the game and then kind of coasted from there. And the game was tight, don't get me wrong. 31-24. The Jaguars kind of squeaked away. Christian Kirk was again the best receiver that week, and they ended up 5-2. Now, if you're a Jaguars fan, I think it's valid to tell yourself that your team has a good chance to win the Super Bowl. They got the third best record in the AFC right now, and they almost beat the Chiefs last year in the playoffs, and this team has only gotten better. I mean, if they can get past the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals, then, you know, maybe you're looking at a Jaguars Super Bowl, one they hadn't been close to since 2017, when that defense almost carried Blake Bortles to the Super Bowl. Of course, that didn't happen, but anyway, that's about it for the Jaguars video. I really just wanted to cover what they've been able to do and this transformation they've gone through in only 7 weeks. Catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.